Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Mioch and you are watching A News. Let's have a look at the headlines. Venezuelan Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado gives her medal to Donald Trump. U.S. President announces Board of Peace for Gaza. Members to be revealed soon. UN Security Council holds emergency meeting on Iran. Thank you for tuning in. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has given her Nobel Peace Prize medal to U.S. President Donald Trump during a meeting at the White House she described as excellent. It was their first face-to-face meeting since Venezuela's longtime leader Nicolas Maduro was captured by U.S. forces earlier this month.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado and U.S. President Donald Trump had lunch together on Thursday at the White House. Machado gave her Nobel Peace Prize medal to him, saying the gift was in recognition of what she called his commitment to the freedom of the Venezuelan people. She's trying to gain some influence over how the president shapes the South American country's political future.
We were able to calmly discuss the expectations and dreams of Venezuelans, the difficult times we are experiencing, but at the same time full of hope for the changes to come. I conveyed to him the determination and commitment of Venezuelan society to fight for a transition that will not only allow us to build democratic, solid and stable institutions, but also to address the most important issue, which is our people, not only in terms of freedoms and the violation of political prisoners, guarantees of free expression, freedom of movement and freedom of organization, but also addressing the enormous humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, due to the situation of income, lack of employment, and the collapse of security, health, and education.
A White House official confirmed that Trump intends to keep the medal. He described the moment as a wonderful gesture of mutual respect in a social media post. The talks come as Venezuela's political future remains uncertain, with opposition figures pushing for a democratic transition and Washington weighing who could play a role in governing the country. The White House reiterated that President Trump maintains a cautious view of Machado's ability to lead Venezuela in the short term to replace the deposed Nicolas Maduro, citing questions over her level of support inside the country.
Cuba paid tribute to 32 soldiers killed in combat during the U.S. military operation in Venezuela that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel and Raul Castro, the 94-year-old retired former Cuban leader, were present in full military uniform to receive the soldiers' remains early Thursday. A motorcade later transferred the remains to the Armed Forces Ministry along one of Havana's main boulevards, lined by thousands of people paying their respects, waving flags and saluting. U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the long-awaited Board of Peace to oversee Gaza's reconstruction has officially been formed, and the board's members will be revealed shortly. Trump says he's backing a newly formed Palestinian technocratic body to govern Gaza during Phase 2 of the transition period. In a social media post, Trump said the move marks the next step of the 20-point peace plan following the ceasefire agreed last October. He also said the plan includes a comprehensive demilitarization agreement with Hamas, supported by Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. Hamas has agreed to hand over control of Gaza to the newly formed Technocratic Committee. Russian President Vladimir Putin held separate phone calls with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian over the situation in Iran, positioning Moscow as a potential mediator. The Kremlin has said that Putin spoke with Pezeshkian over the phone as he continued efforts to de-escalate tensions between Washington and Tehran. During his call with Netanyahu, Putin spoke of ensuring stability and security in the region, according to the Kremlin. This comes as Iran faced widespread protests and mounting international pressure in recent weeks, with several Western countries closing diplomatic missions in Tehran over security concerns. The U.S. called for an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Thursday following deadly anti-government protests in Iran. It comes as U.S. President Donald Trump warns of military intervention, while Tehran says it will retaliate in equal proportion.
There were calls for calm at the United Nations Security Council held on Thursday over the deadly protests in Iran. It's after reports of thousands of deaths during the unrest in the last few weeks. Iranian journalist and political dissident Masih Alinejad broke down in tears as she read out the names of people she said were killed during the demonstrations.
Negin Qadimi, 20 years old. She died in her father's arms after being shot by the Revolutionary Guards member. I feel guilty that I don't name the rest. The list of names goes on and on. They knew they will face guns and bullets, but they wanted justice.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz told the Council that Trump supports the people of Iran. He blamed the Iranian government for the unrest, which he said began late last year due to economic decline.
President Donald J. Trump and the United States of America stands by the brave people of Iran, period. And regardless of its excuses, and you will hear many today from the Iranian regime and from its friends, the regime is solely responsible for the economic misery of the Iranian people and the repression of their freedom, and they will be held accountable.
Waltz also addressed allegations by Tehran that the US and Israel are fueling the unrest and exploiting it for political gain.
Everyone in the world needs to know that the regime is weaker than ever before and therefore is putting forward this lie because of the power of the Iranian people in the streets. Colleagues, let me be clear. President Trump is a man of action, not endless talk like we see at the United Nations. He has made it clear all options are on the table to stop the slaughter. And no one should know that better than the leadership of the Iranian regime.
Iran called Trump's threats a violation of international law and warned of retaliation.
Iran seeks neither escalation nor confrontation. However, any act of aggression, direct or indirect, will be met with a decisive, proportionate, and lawful response under Article 51 of the Charter. This is not a threat. It is a statement of legal reality. Responsibility for all consequences will rest solely with those who initiate such unlawful acts.
On Thursday, Trump adopted a wait-and-see posture, saying he had been told the killings were easing and that he believed there was no current plan for large-scale executions. The comments come as UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres urged maximum restraint, calling on all actors to refrain from any actions that could lead to further loss of life or trigger a wider regional escalation.
Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi hosted her Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni in Tokyo as the two countries moved to boost bilateral ties. Speaking after the talks, Takaichi said the two leaders had agreed to elevate relations to a special strategic partnership. Meloni said the discussions focused on economic security including efforts to safeguard strategic technologies and strengthen global supply chains. Meloni's visit comes as Japan and Italy mark 160 years of diplomatic relations. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney have announced lower tariffs, signaling a reset in their countries' relationship after talks in Beijing. China is expected to lower levies on Canadian canola oil from 85% to 15% by March 1st, while Ottawa has agreed to tax Chinese electric vehicles at the most favored nation rate of 6.1%. The deal is a breakthrough after years of strained ties and tit-for-tat levies. South Korea's impeached president Yoon Suk-yeol will be jailed for 5 years over abuse of power, obstructing justice, and falsifying documents in relation to his failed martial law bid in 2024. This is the first of the verdicts in 4 trials linked to his shock martial law decree.
Opinions are divided in South Koreans after a court sentenced former President Yoon Suk-yeol to 5 years in prison over an unsuccessful bid to impose martial law in December 2024. The Seoul Central District Court found Yoon guilty of using the Presidential Security Service to stop investigators from arresting him at his home. This is considered the first ruling in several cases against the former president. Some residents showed disappointment at the sentencing.
Overall, when I look at President Yoon's actions, I honestly think that emotionally, for me, the sentence was a bit too lenient.
While others questioned whether due process was properly followed in his case,
when ordinary people look at this, they wonder, how could there even be talk of an insurrection in a presidential system? It was wrong from the start, and the order to arrest Yoon itself was wrong. What I mean is, if you want to apprehend a president, you must follow legal procedures, but those procedures weren't followed.
the case has sparked a wider debate across the country over leadership, accountability, and the rule of law.
Social media companies have collectively deactivated nearly 5 million accounts belonging to Australian teenagers just a month after a world-first ban on under-16s took effect. The implementation of the ban is being closely watched by regulators worldwide.
Nearly 5 million Australian social media accounts belonging to teenagers have been deactivated. It's just more than a month since Australia took a world-first step to ban under-16-year-olds from accessing social media platforms. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese praised the initiative.
Today we can announce that this is working. 4.7 million accounts gone, suspended, stopped, meaning that young people, instead of being on their devices during these school holidays, have been cycling around facilities such as this, have been reading books, have been engaging with their friends and family on a one-to-one basis, interacting, making an enormous difference to them. It has given as well parents that peace of mind and not worrying about what their children are looking at online.
Children and parents won't face penalties for breaking the rules. Instead, social media companies could be fined up to $33 million for serious or repeated breaches. The tally of 4.7 million accounts is far higher than was originally estimated. It equates to more than 2 accounts for every Australian aged between 10 and 16 years old, based on population data.
I'm very confident these numbers are right, but we will continue to check. We have a whole range of research methods that we'll be looking at to make sure that the data that is given to us is right.
The rollout of the ban is being closely watched by regulators around the world. France, Malaysia and Indonesia have said they will introduce similar laws, while several European countries and US states are also considering following Australia's lead.
After a short break, we'll be discussing the news on the second phase of the Gaza peace plan. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now to talk on the latest developments surrounding the Gaza peace plan. We're joined by political analyst and former diplomat Melih Demirtas, coming to us from Ankara. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the U.S. president confirmed the start of the next phase of the Gaza ceasefire and declared his backing for the newly appointed Palestinian technocratic government. What can we expect to be the next practical steps?
Yes, Mr. Much. It is coming like an important and fast, I think, development. It's coming in an age of maybe, again, turmoil and crisis time, because the regions is still burning due to some, of course, important crisis in some important other countries. Still in Palestine, of course, the people needs the projection. The people needs some future plans. And as many actors, I think, from Turkey to Qatar, of course, United States and Egypt, they support all these plans, first of all. I think the first phase still has some, of course, gaps. We can say due to some humanitarian situation, due to some, of course, lack of maybe assistance from some organizations, especially some civil and humanitarian organizations, because of the, I think, prohibition and very strict controls of the Israeli side. I think we must still talk on this first phase. But yes, Mr. Trump, and I think this ideal backed by Mr. Trump and his maybe government wants to see the second phase and that the second phase is working or not. We are hopeful. I think all the actors backing this truce, this ceasefire, first of all, of course, Turkey and of course Qatar, Egypt, and United States, but all these other countries, from Europe to the Arabic world, they want to see this positive result. But in the second phase, first of all, we must talk about this government, technocratic government, how it will be elected, and how the United States will react, first of all, to the negative or some still destructive attitudes from the Israeli government side. And I think we must see much more impartial or neutral United States, especially in the second phase.
There was another announcement as well that the Board of Peace, meant to oversee this Palestinian technocratic body, was formed and that its members will be announced shortly. Do you expect any surprises there? And how do you see this body that Trump said he will chair working?
As I said, this impartiality or this neutrality, because of this importance, Mr. Much, because yes, we know that Mr. Trump wants to lead. I think he also wants to project maybe himself and his government as important peace builder all over the world, as he always repeats in his official declarations, I think from Latin America to Asia to other countries in the Middle East. He always declares that he builds peace. But as far as we can see, there can be some, of course, hesitations to fully maybe trust to one actor, United States. Because of this, we always, as Turkey, maybe also the other actors like I think Azerbaijan, also from some European partners, they always think about also this neutral body. It could be, as you said, as a committee, but I think United Nations and also these Middle Eastern countries, of course, Arabic countries, also some Israeli representatives can be there. It is the number one rule of some truce or ceasefire agreements. But from Netanyahu government and from Trump government, we really expect that this committee must be elected in a neutral basis. I think this body or the committee members must be elected, first of all, from some humanitarian maybe associations, from some United Nations members, for example, and also they must really attribute, first of all, to the needs of the people, to the ordinary life of humanity, especially in Gaza now, right now.
Well, Trump also said Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey will help to secure what he called a comprehensive demilitarization agreement with Hamas. Now, that's one of the major points of the plan, along with the Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. In what way can Cairo, Doha, and Ankara help in achieving it?
This is the much more discussed or tricky or conflictual maybe point of this ceasefire, because as far as we know that from the Israeli side, many names or many people are always seen quote-unquote dangerous to their national security or to the idea of maybe Israel, what they want to build, I mean, as a secure place for themselves, for their population. But still, I think from Turkish or Qatari or Egyptian side, this demilitarization is also goes hand in hand maybe with, of course, demilitarization of these groups. First of all, Hamas and some other groups which can be radicalized in very short time. Because as far as we can see again, every day we can see new civilian losses. After this ceasefire agreement, even in these truce conditions, we can see some civilians start to or continue to lose their lives, and also the ordinary lives cannot be rehabilitated. And we expect really from this side, I mean from the side of Israel, that something must be done much more positively. So about demilitarization, yes, we need some help, especially from a neutral body, again from United Nations and some other maybe Arabic committee or a League of Arab First. And we can say that from the Turkey side, yes, it could be some forces from military or from some police forces, but from Egyptian, especially from Qatari side, there can be this deployment much more easily. But deployment conditions and maybe the number of some soldiers and everything must be discussed again, especially with the side of the United States.
As you mentioned in the beginning of our talk, there are geopolitical shifts happening recently, major shifts, and they happen very frequently. Now, in the Middle East, there is another hotspot right now. Do you see the situation in Iran and the ambiguity over a possible U.S. intervention there affecting the dynamics of the Gaza peace plan?
For many commentators, yes, it is maybe the reality of United States policy, especially in these last months, in this last year. Please do not forget that the heavy bombardments from the United States, from the Israeli side to the Iranian targets, 12 days war, I mean, it is always called in the international literature right now. But still, I think Iranian's internal policy, as you said, is so complicated. And it turns to be like a very sudden development, maybe for Trump government, maybe also for Mr. Witkoff and the other maybe diplomats. They want to see the result, I think, immediately. But for a situation which is an equal complication like Iran, I mean Gaza and Palestine, I think we need time. And Iran, yes, it could have some effects on many regions still. We cannot deny the linkage with some groups in Middle East, I mean with Iranian regime, but still that doesn't mean that the humanitarian solutions must be maybe sacrificed for this realist understanding of some, I mean, American policy, first of all, against Iran. Yes, we must see the result right now as a peaceful result between this Israeli and these Palestinian authorities, and this technocratic government, because of this, must be chosen like in a, as I said in this first response, in a very impartial and a neutral sense. If Mr. Trump said, I am the only chair and I will decide everything, I think in such an environment, in such an international politics, especially in such a region like Middle East, it could really lead some other important negative complications in a very near future.
Thank you very much for joining us and providing us with your insight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mitch.
After a short break, we'll be taking a look at major stories from the region. Welcome back. Baku hosted an international conference on the challenges faced by Sikhs and other minority communities in India. Delegates and diaspora representatives urged international action to address alleged human rights violations.
Here in Baku, international attention is being drawn to allegations of long-standing discrimination and concerns regarding Sikh and other minority communities across India. Through testimonies, expert analysis and diplomatic engagement, this conference seeks to elevate these concerns beyond regional boundaries and to press for accountability under international human rights law.
Members of the Sikh diaspora from the UK, Canada and the United States attended the conference and shared their views. Discussions highlighted how actions by the current Indian government are alleged to violate several United Nations conventions relating to civil rights and the prohibition of torture. Abbas Abbasov, director of the Baku Initiative Group, said the organisation is committed to defending the rights of indigenous peoples and ethnic minorities and to exposing colonial and neo-colonial practices.
I believe that the policies of discrimination and violence pursued by the Indian government must be clearly and accurately communicated to the international community, and that relevant international organizations should deliver a fair and principled response. As an international NGO, we will raise this issue at the United Nations and other relevant international bodies.
Also attending the event, the Minister for Human Rights and Minority Affairs in Pakistan's Punjab province noted that recent incidents across India point to a broader pattern of religious pressure affecting Muslim, Christian and Sikh communities alike.
If you look at the past recent incidents happened in India, what happened? Today, the Muslims, they are suffering, either the Muslims of Kashmir, the Muslim of Gujarat, Christians. During recent Christmas event, there were more than 700 events occurred in India where the Christian community was not allowed to offer the rituals according to their faith.
The Sikh Federation chairman said the current situation reflects a 70-year pattern of pressure faced by Sikhs and other minorities.
We're out there as Sikhs, not fleeing from this violence, but to actually challenge the violence and India's violence. We want to make sure that the world sees us as not as just victims, but as people seeking freedom, people that have been on the case of sovereignty for decades.
Today, the Sikh population in India exceeds 25 million people, with the majority residing in the Punjab region. Activists at the event called for formal recognition of the 1984 anti-Sikh massacres as genocide and urged the establishment of an independent commission to examine the incidents and ensure accountability.
Georgia's ruling party has filed a complaint with the BBC over a report that suggested that Georgian authorities used toxic chemical compounds to disperse protests in late 2024. Our Nini Nikolashvili brings more on that from Tbilisi.
The ruling party, Georgian Dream, has officially filed a complaint against the BBC, accusing the British public broadcaster of disseminating false, unverified and defamatory allegations against the Georgian government. The announcement was made by Speaker of Parliament, Shalva Papuashvili. According to Papuashvili, the complaint demands a public apology from the BBC and the removal of a film and related materials that alleged Georgian law enforcement used a World War I-era chemical weapon during protests. The ruling party categorically denies the claims, calling them fabricated and politically driven. The complaint is grounded in the BBC's own editorial principles. The UK's Ofcom Broadcasting Code and European Court of Human Rights COS law, which obliges journalists to meet the highest standards of accuracy and fairness when making serious allegations. Georgian Dream argues that the BBC failed on multiple fronts: accuracy, impartiality, and the right of reply while presenting assumptions as established facts. Papuashvili stated that if the BBC does not correct the alleged violations internally, the case will move to Ofcom and potentially to UK courts, with the option of appealing to the European Court of Human Rights. The controversy has reignited political confrontation inside Georgia. Opposition figures dismissed the complaint as a distraction tactic, insisting that an international investigation, not legal pressure on media, is needed to determine what caused the alleged chemical poisoning during the December protests. Internationally, the BBC's initial reporting had already drawn attention from foreign officials and rights groups, amplifying scrutiny of Georgia's protest response and fueling broader geopolitical narratives. Georgian Dream, however, claims that those reactions were based on a predetermined false narrative. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A-News.
Ankara has voiced strong support for recent military operations by the Syrian government in the country's north and is now indicating it may be ready to provide direct military assistance. Adam Morrow has more in Istanbul.
The Turkish Defense Ministry has voiced strong support for recent military operations carried out by the Syrian government against the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, in northern Syria. Speaking at a press briefing on Thursday, ministry officials said Ankara is prepared to provide military assistance to Damascus in the north of the country, signaling a potential move toward more direct military cooperation. Turkish officials praised the Syrian army's actions against the SDF, describing the operation as a successful counterterrorism effort aimed at protecting civilians and restoring public order. The comments follow several days of intense fighting last week between Syrian government forces and SDF fighters. According to Syria's health ministry, at least 24 people were killed in the clashes, including civilians. Tens of thousands of people are reported to have fled Aleppo and surrounding areas as a direct result of the fighting. The SDF signed an agreement with Damascus last year, under which its fighters were to be incorporated into the Syrian army. That deal, however, has yet to be implemented. On Thursday, Turkish defense officials repeated calls for the SDF's integration into the Syrian army, stressing Turkey's support for the principle of one state, one army in Syria. Ankara considers the SDF a terrorist organization due to its close ties with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, which waged a decades-long violent insurgency against the Turkish state. This is Adam Morrow for A-News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Representatives of Armenia and Azerbaijan conducted a joint inspection on the condition of the Yeresk-Sadarak railway section, according to Armenia's Territorial Administration and Infrastructure Ministry. In a statement, the ministry said that the inspection aimed to assess the technical suitability of the railway section for the movement of specialized railway construction equipment in order to implement comprehensive measures for the restoration of infrastructure. Kazakhstan is adjusting its oil export routes amid ongoing disruptions to the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. The changes follow a series of attacks and operational restrictions that have raised concerns over supply security and budgetary risks. Our Fariza Kalimurzina has the details.
Kazakhstan is redirecting its oil exports amid ongoing restrictions on the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, the key route that carries up to 80% of the country's crude exports. In late December, around 300,000 tons of oil were redirected via alternative routes through the Castrans-Oil system. Supplies were sent to Germany, China, along the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan corridor, and through the Russian ports of Novorossiysk and Ust-Luga. Kazakhstan's national oil company says these measures will continue into January 2026 as long as restrictions remain in place. At the same time, Kazakhstan is increasing deliveries to Europe. In 2025, exports to Germany reached 2.1 million tons, while with the volumes expected to rise to 2.5 million tons next year. Oil shipments to China remain stable, totaling 1.1 million tons last year. Tensions escalated after an attack on the Caspian Pipeline Consortium on November 29th last year. Kazakhstan's foreign ministry described the incident as an act of aggression and lodged an official protest. In mid-December, the energy minister confirmed the losses of 480,000 tons, but said the annual production and export targets would still be met. In January this year, the situation worsened. Drones targeted two tankers preparing to load Kazakh oil, causing damage while the vessels were awaiting loading. And according to experts, continued attacks along this route could lead to significant financial losses for the state budget. They argued that the current situation calls not for temporary measures or emergency fixes, but for a systematic long-term diversification strategy. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Azerbaijan's state oil company SOCAR has begun supplying Azerbaijani natural gas to Austria and Germany, marking a new phase in the country's gas exports to Europe. SOCAR said the supplies are being delivered via the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, the European segment of the Southern Gas Corridor, allowing Azerbaijani gas to reach southern and central European markets. The deliveries routed through Italy expand Azerbaijan's geographic gas footprint in Europe, bringing the total number of countries receiving Azerbaijani gas to 16. Moscow has underlined its recognition of Afghanistan's current authorities as Russian President Vladimir Putin received the credentials of Afghanistan's ambassador and made fresh remarks on the future of Russian-Afghan relations. Artemim Bahis has more on that in Kabul.
At a ceremony in the Kremlin, the ambassador of Afghanistan to Russia, Gul Hassan Hassan, officially presented his credential to President Vladimir Putin. The event was held alongside the reception of letters of credence from ambassadors of several other countries. But it was President Putin's remarks during the ceremony that have drawn particular attention. The Russian leader said that cooperation between Russia and Afghanistan has gained momentum in recent years, linking the progress to Moscow's decision last year to recognize Afghanistan's new authorities. Putin described the move as laying the groundwork for stronger political and economic engagement, suggesting that relations between the two sides are now entering a more structured and formal stage. He also referred to Afghanistan's observer status in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, reaffirming Russia's interest in seeing the country emerge as a united, independent and peaceful state. In his words, Moscow wants to see an Afghanistan free from war, terrorism and drug trafficking, comments that underline Russia's broader regional security priorities as it deepens engagement with Kabul. For Afghanistan, the credential ceremony carries strong symbolic weight, reinforcing the diplomatic legitimacy gained with Russia's recognition last year and translating it into a more visible official relationship. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll be discussing the new markets for Azerbaijani gas deliveries. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now to talk on Azerbaijani gas deliveries to new European markets, we're joined by Osama Rizvi, founder of Rizvi Insights, coming to us from Lahore. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Can you please walk us through what the expansion of deliveries to Germany and Austria means for the Azerbaijani gas sector, but also for European energy security?
Thank you so much for giving me the chance to share my thoughts today. You know, we need to look at from what's going on in the world right now from a wider angle. Europe tends to seek energy independence and has been gradually weaning itself off from Russian oil and gas both. It is also trying to find new suppliers, supplies that are certain supplies that are not subject to geopolitical unrests. And in this regard, to answer the second part of your question first, it is a very good news for Europe, and it bodes really well for European countries that they will be getting gas from another supplier. And once again, we need to look at Azerbaijan's own gas production. It has been increasing 50 billion cubic meter BCM last year. And when we look at the new fields, I'm expecting there would be increased production coming forward. And this is where, we come to the first part of your question, that Europe has now found a supplier that is not only, certain, not only dependable, but also expects to increase its production. And then for Azerbaijan to apply to Germany and other countries, it means that it has transformed itself from just being a regional player to a central and significant entity in the global gas demand and supply infrastructure. And I think in the coming years, it is only to get more limelight as an energy hub.
Now, just to chase that question with a follow-up with this latest development and everything you said so far, do you see this opening doors for more opportunities for different European countries to start buying Azerbaijani gas?
Well, definitely. We need to look at what's going on right now. In Europe, the gas reserves, of course, are sufficient at the moment, but we also saw a few years ago that they weren't. We never know when does the weather change. Extreme weather has become a common characteristic of the world we're living in, unfortunately, due to climate change. So for other European countries, Eastern European countries or Western, Southern European countries, this also bodes well for them, and they will have another supplier. But one thing that I think we are all missing, there are always a tail risk to these developments. Two things. First, there is a lot of gas supply coming into the world. There is a lot of new projects coming online by 2040, 2050. Secondly, as gas is going to play a very important role in the global energy mix moving forward, we also need to look at the price. So for countries like Azerbaijan, the gas price also needs to be at a level and stay at a level where it incentivizes the companies, the private sector and the government to further expand the pipelines and network. So that dynamic would certainly come into play, but definitely it would be beneficial for other countries, not only in Europe, actually, in other countries as well. For instance, Pakistan can benefit from it, but once again, their own economic issues may come as a hindrance. But these are some of the factors that we need to consider as well.
Given the current trends and forecasts when it comes to these prices and output boosts, do you expect this to influence all those expanding pipeline capacities?
Well, I'm expecting in the shorter run, I'm expecting a lot of further projects, infrastructure expansion, pipeline integration with other neighboring countries. And I believe when we look at this region, Eurasia, regional integration, regional energy integration is going to be a hallmark for the coming next few decades, actually, because we are the region where the energy demand is going to come from. 85 to 80% of the population lives in the non-OECD countries, and this region is definitely going to see a surge in energy demand. And as I said, that a major part of it is going to come from gas, and that is why I see infrastructure building up. But in the longer run, the price incentive, along with domestic issues of certain countries, may hinder or may, put a cap on the capacity of how much can be gained from such projects. But this is, of course, part of such initiatives. And overall, I think it's a welcoming development.
Osama, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insight.
Thank you so much.
While Russia continues its full-scale war in Ukraine, a major sanctions evasion network is helping it acquire critical Western technology. An exclusive A News investigative documentary, Shadow Trade, reveals how Armenia has become a central hub in the scheme.
Despite sweeping Western sanctions, Russia's military machine continues to receive a flood of vital foreign components. Exclusive A News investigation reveals a key route through Armenia. Data shows Armenian exports to Russia exploded from $880 million before the war to nearly $3 billion now. The spike is in specific critical categories: phones, computers, machinery, and microchips, exactly what Russia needs for its weapons.
A lot of countries cannot export directly to Russia because of sanctions. So imagine the trucks that have a lot of electronics, a lot of phones come to Armenia. Some trucks from Russia, some trucks from other countries. And the goods from other countries on the spot are hauled from one truck to the other on the spot. And those go to Russia. And the paperwork is such that those products were produced in Armenia, but this is the case. So this is in fact re-exports. So the paperwork says that those products were produced in Armenia, so to circumvent the sanctions.
Experts say Armenia's small economy could never absorb or produce such a volume, confirming it's a transit point.
Seeing that kind of data, seeing that evolution of demand in those countries, that evolution of their trade with the European Union, we can say for sure that not the story about the development of their economies and their industries, that's the story about the re-export of goods via their territories to the Russian Federation.
Ukrainian forensic teams dismantle Russian missiles and drones daily, finding them full of these Western microchips. They confirm the components are essential for Russia's attacks.
So in general, we have identified about 600 components, different components in different types of weapons. I'm sure that if these chips will not provide it to Russia, they will not be able to use missiles and drones.
In return, Armenia receives billions in sanctioned Russian gold.
According to the Armenian Customs Service, the country sharply increased its gold imports. In 2023 and in the first half of 2024, it reached $4.4 billion, about 66 tons. And there are companies which are backed by Armenian oligarchs and politicians who are part of this entire scheme, which also raises legitimate questions whether the Armenian government is aware or somehow protects this entire business.
To move this volume, investigators track the operation to Yerevan's Zvartnots airport, where cargo traffic doubled. The gold is then re-exported to markets like the UAE, creating a secret financial channel for Moscow. While Armenia's Prime Minister speaks of European aspirations, the investigation finds the country deeply enmeshed in Russia's sanction-busting network, a network with deadly consequences on the Ukrainian front.
Do not miss Shadow Trade tonight at 8 p.m. Central European Time. Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.